Yes, sir. Good evening. Good to be here. We're going to go back and we're going to go back into Exodus chapter 20, and we're going to deal with our next commandment. I'm just going to say this is in a general way. We could spend probably 2 months on this next commandment. It has become so complex that there's so much to talk about with this next commandment, but we're only going to spend the night on it unless somewhere down the line you want me to dive into some of these other things. You with me in Exodus 20? We're going to look at verse 13. Thou shalt not kill. Okay, thou shalt not kill. So let me say this, because Laramie just said it a while ago in his prayer, that we know God's mighty works because of what he's done in our life. Okay. In other words, how he saved us and forgave us. Okay. Over the next few weeks, as we deal with these commandments, we're going to deal with specific sins as we deal with these commandments. And we're going to have the inclination to say, well, this is worse than that. This is worse than that. Well, let me tell you something. Jesus Christ died for every murderer that ever lived or that ever will live. All right. And any murderer that comes to Jesus Christ and repents is going to be in better shape than the good moral person that has died in unbelief. Okay. Because the devil's hell for unbelief is just as hot as it is for an unrepented murderer. Okay. And so I want you to know that God can forgive. Not only can he forgive, but he can cleanse. And not only can he cleanse, but he can heal from whatever we have dealt with. Okay. Because we got a big, mighty God. And he's got a big old dustbuster. And he can get rid of all that junk out of our life. Amen. All right. With that said, we're going to deal with a lot of different things about thou shalt not kill tonight. And it's going to be kind of moving fast, but I'm not going to really just sit and talk about one thing. So what does it mean, thou shalt not kill? Okay. The very first thing that we need to talk about, in my opinion, the very first thing we need to talk about is capital punishment. All right. I mean, do we have the right biblically for capital punishment to put someone to death? So there's a lot of people on both sides of that debate, but let's see what the Bible has to say about it. Okay. The Hebrew word for murder in Exodus 20, verse 13 is ratsha. Okay. It means to slay or to burst. It is used in the Old Testament to refer to the unlawful taking of another's life. Numbers 35. Can you? Numbers 35. I can't see it back over there, so I'll have to turn around and look at it. Numbers 35, verses 16 through 19. Uses the same word to the careless taking of somebody's life. Okay. Am I going to have something up there in a minute? Numbers 35, verses 16 through 19. All right, here we go. And if he smite him with an instrument of iron so that he die, he's a murderer. Same word. The murderer shall be surely put to death. And if he smite with a throwing a stone, wherein he may die, and he die, he is a murderer. The murderer shall surely be put to death. Or if he smite him with the hand of a weapon of wood, wherewith he may die, and he die, he is a murderer. The murderer shall surely be put to death. The revenger of blood himself shall slay the murderer. When he meeteth him, he shall slay him. So this is the same word. And this is the careless taking of somebody's life. If you look at it, it's you throw the stone as to kill somebody. You struck them with something as to kill somebody. So they are a murderer. And it's the same word that's used there in Exodus 20:30. Rasha is not the normal word used to speak of judicial execution. That word is muth. Okay. Rasha is used 49 times in the Old Testament, and it's only used once as a judicial execution. So all the other times it's the murder of somebody. All right. So does the Bible give us freedom to execute a criminal? So that's going to be the question. Jesus said, "Ye have heard it said of old time, thou shalt not kill, and whosoever shall kill shall be in danger of the judgment." He also confirms that in Matthew 19:18. God speaking to Noah. Now, this is where we got to go to. God speaking to Noah after the flood in Genesis 9:6. This is what he said. "Whosoever sheds man's blood, shall his blood be shed. For he is for in the image of God made he man." Okay. And so God says to Noah, now this is before the law. This is before Moses. God says to God says to Noah, if a man shall kill another man, then his life shall be taken to him. That was then. Okay. We should remind ourselves that was before the Old Testament law of Moses. Notice in the passage, humans did not come up with this idea. Okay. It wasn't, Noah didn't go to God and say, what do you think ought to happen when somebody kills somebody? No, it was God's idea. Okay. So that's really important, because one of the things we get accused of is we come up with stuff. Well, this is God. This is God speaking to Moses, and he's putting this out there. So it was him that instituted it. Now, this gives us a huge responsibility to mankind. I want you to think about this now. For mankind, we'll have to decide what crimes are worthy of death. Okay? Now you think about that. And what kind of punishments are going to be carried out for the other ones? See, God put the human government on Noah, and there's a responsibility there. Romans 13, please go there, brother. Romans 13, verses 1 through 7. This is the equivalent to Genesis 9. I'm going to go there so I can read it myself. He's already there, but I'm going to get there in a minute. All right. So verses 1 through 7. Let every soul be subject unto the higher powers. Now, what kind of higher powers? Governmental authority. We have a responsibility to obey our governmental authorities. We just do. For there is no power but of God, and the powers that are be ordained are of God. So God's the one that appointed these people. Whosoever therefore resisteth the power resisteth the ordinance of God, and they that resist it shall receive themselves damnation. For rulers are not a terror to good works, but to evil. Will thou not then be afraid of the power? Do that which is good, and thou shalt have praise of the same. For he is a minister, and this is where I want you to start paying attention. For he is a minister. That's the word diakonos. He's a deacon of God. He's a servant of God. To thee for good. So the ruler is for good. But if thou do that which is evil, be afraid, for he beareth not the sword. All right. So let's talk about the sword for a minute. What does the sword represent here?
Here it represents capital punishment.
Okay, but yes, it does. But how do we know that in this day, in first century? How do we know that?
Because they would behead people.
They would behead people with the sword. We know that. They did that to James over in the book of Acts. We know that that's the way they would bring justice, is through the sword. The sword's also going to represent the power to have war, okay, to delegate war. Okay, so he bears the sword not in vain. For For he is the minister, again, diakonos of God. And look at this next word, a revenger to execute wrath upon him that doeth evil. Now, if we had a different version of the Bible, and we don't, but if we had a different version, it would be avenger, not revenger, but avenger. And the ESV and the NASB both use the word avenger. This is a compound word, and it has the prefix, which is a preposition, ek. Ek means out of, okay? So out of. The rest of the word means justice. So he's a avenger out of justice, okay? So justice comes out of this man. Okay. The servant, an avenger who carries out God's wrath on the wrongdoer. Okay. So out of justice, he carries out God's wrath upon the wrongdoer. All right. So that's important. I mean, I think it's important anyway. So the government bears the sword. And again, that shows that was the way they executed people back then. It also shows the power to have war. This is all I'm going to say about it. I believe that the Bible, both the Old and the New Testament, teach that there is a place for capital punishment. Now, I do believe that it is left up to governments to figure out how and when to use those things, okay? I don't believe we can go to the Old Testament and say, well, my kids disobeyed me, let's take them out here and stone them. you know what I'm saying? Yeah. One thing about it, we'd have plenty to eat. No, not cannibal. We would have less people to share food with. All right. War. That's the next thing we need to talk about. So we talked about capital punishment. Let's talk about war for a few minutes. What about war? Oh, man. Let me get over here to this. See if I can find Hodge real quick. Y'all just hang on. Man, Hodge has a. Do I have a page number? I don't have the page number. Y'all just hang on a minute. Charles Hodge, which is he was a pastor, Presbyterian pastor in the 19th century, talks about the horrors of war. Now, I want you to listen to this quote from him. It is conceded that war is one of the most dreadful evils that can be inflicted on people, that it involves the destruction of property and life, and it demoralizes both victors and the vanquished, that it visits thousands of non-combatants with all of the miseries of poverty, widowhood, and orphanage, and that it tends to arrest the progress of society and everything that is good and desirable. It is also conceded that the vast majority of the wars which have desolated the world have been unjustifiable in the sight of God and man. Nevertheless, it does not follow from this that war in all cases is to be condemned. So I thought that was a pretty interesting way of putting it, that as bad as it is. Now, he was alive before two of the worst world wars that there's ever been, World War I and World War II, when a lot of the world was devastated. And so you'd imagine what he'd had to say about that.
Now, he just said that most wars are unjustified?
Yes, that's what he said.
Well, in a sense, most wars are caused by one nation being an aggressor against the other.
Yes.
Okay.
I agree. And so I would say, he would say that the Civil War in America would have been justifiable. You know what I'm saying? It was something to relieve another group of people. You see what I'm saying?
Well, we won't get into that.
Okay, we won't get into it, but I'm just telling you, I'm saying Hodge would have probably said that. I can't speak for him. Again, as the previous point, the word rasha is never used in the case of war in the Old Testament. One thing that must be noted is God himself commanded the children of Israel to go to war in several occasions. Okay? And so you got to look at that. And in the New Testament, John the Baptist. You remember when John the Baptist was baptizing and people coming to him and said, well, what do we need to do? What do we need to do? And in Luke chapter 3, verse 14, he says, and the soldiers likewise demanded of him, saying, and what shall we do? And he said to them, do violence to no man, neither accuse any falsely, and be content of your wages. He didn't say nothing about quit being a soldier, did he? Acts 10 and verse 1. There was a certain man in Caesarea called Cornelius, a centurion of the band called the Italian band. What's a centurion?
Over 100.
Yeah, okay. So who was Cornelius?
Cornelius was the soldier,
Yes, but who was he?
the leader.
But what happened
He
to
was
him?
a Gentile. He was the first Gentile that Peter went to.
Yeah, yeah. And Peter didn't say you need to quit being a soldier. You see what I'm saying? They didn't condemn it. And then Jesus used the example of war in Luke 14:31, where he's talking about what ruler don't sit down and count the cost whether he can meet 20,000 with his 10,000. Okay. And so again, he didn't say that there was no place for armies. You see what I'm saying? It could be argued that the sword included the idea of waging war by a ruler. All right. So I think that when I say this, I don't think that if a soldier has been commanded to go into a place, that a soldier should be held. I don't think he's going to be held accountable for murder. Let's put it that way. He's doing what he was commanded to do. Now, if you go beyond that,
Right, you just great killing the man.
yes,
But you go all the way back to Joshua. Whenever he saw the angel of the Lord.
Yeah.
Wasn't he in full battle around?
oh yeah,
I
yeah.
mean, there's a sense of warlike.
And there's a war in heaven
Yeah,
among the angels.
war at the end, and
Yeah, and so yes, there's war, and again, I believe it's held in a different light, if that makes sense. Okay, and especially a just war. Now, what about self-defense? Woo! What about self-defense? Can we defend ourselves?
Not really anymore.
I had a
Cam's go there.
Yeah.
I have some friends that thinks it's terrible that a preacher would carry a gun with him, but I don't know a preacher nowadays that don't carry a gun. To be honest with you, I mean they just everyone I know totes a gun, got their concealed carry, and because times is bad. All right, but what about self-defense? Well, now if you hadn't been under a rock, you've seen Tony Spell. Does anybody know who Tony Spell is?
That's the pastor me and you were talking about the other day.
And according to him, and you take this for whatever you want to take it as, but according to him, he was protecting his family, okay, and his what he got into down there. I'm not going to question it one way or the other. I don't know enough about it. I wasn't involved in it. You know what I'm saying? But Jesus said in Matthew 24:43, but know this, that the good man of the house, if he had known in what watch the thief would have come, he would have watched and would not have suffered his house to be broken up. Now, how would he have stopped him? Would he have said, I'm home, don't come in? No. No. If somebody, listen to me, if somebody's coming in your house knowing you're at home, they got bad intent. Okay? Was it you and I that was talking about people watching you? And it was me and somebody was talking about people watching, and they knew when you wasn't at home.
That's me and you.
Yeah, okay, I knew it was me and somebody. And so if they come in and you at home, they got bad intent, okay? So let's talk about a few other places. What about Esther chapter 8, verses 10 and 11? Can you pull that up, brother? Because I don't want to have to go look at that. Okay, 10. And he wrote in King Ahasuerus' name and sealed it with the king's ring and sent letters by post on horsemen and riders and mules and camels and young dromedaries, wherein the king granted the Jews which were in every city to gather themselves together and to stand. What's that next phrase?
Stand for their life,
To what?
to destroy, to slay, and cause to perish.
All the power of the people and the providence that would assault them, both their little ones and the women, and to take spoil of them for a prey. Okay? So right here we see they had the ability to protect themselves. It's self-defense. It was self-defense. They didn't go out and attack, but they knew that they had self-defense. Proverbs 25, verse 26, brother. A righteous man falling down before the wicked is as a troubled fountain and a corrupt spring. So this is somebody that's given in to the wicked to do what they want to with them. Exodus 22, verses 2 and 3. If a thief, look at this now, if a thief be found breaking up and be smitten that he die, there shall no blood be shed for him. If the sun rises upon him, there shall be blood shed for him, for he should have made full restitution if he had nothing, but he shall be sold for his theft. So if he got killed at the night coming in, that's the point, then there was no blood to be shed for him. So it was self-defense. You were in your house. A couple other places, I'm not going to ask Laramie to go look for them, but Deuteronomy chapter 22, verses 25 through 27. This is the woman that was raped in the field, that was betrothed to another, and she cried out. Nobody was there to help. How were they going to help her? Okay, there was going to be self-defense. Somebody was going to have to go help her. Psalm 82, verse 3 and 4, the same thing. Paul defended himself in court on several occasions, and his friends. So we have all that, and I want to read this right here, and this is John Frame. Scripture does not say much about individual self-defense as such. Though Exodus 22 verses 2 and 3 sanctions the killing of someone who invades your home after dark, if someone seeks to kill you or a family member and there is no help available, it is right for you to ward off the attack by force if necessary. The law of love limits our response even to home invader, but it does not forbid us to defend our lives, our families, and our possessions by force to the extent that is necessary to do so. And so I think that is a pretty good way of looking at that myself. So self-defense, I believe through the Old Testament law and through examples in other places in Scripture, that it's right for us to protect ourselves from a criminal that is going to hurt us or our family or even a neighbor if we have the opportunity to try to help one of our neighbors. All right, I got 10 minutes to deal with this last little bit. I'm going to put three things in one heading I'm going to concentrate on one or two of them, and one of them I'm not going to say much about. Abortion, euthanasia, and suicide. All of these are choices that people make. Okay? Would you agree with that? Remember, God is a God of forgiveness, okay, cleansing, and healing when people need that. One of the things that complicates abortion now, and I think most of us would say that life begins at conception. Maybe you wouldn't, but I think most of us would. One of the things that complicates abortion now is some of these new ways that they have to help people have children. If you artificially inseminate eggs, well, you might have 7 or 8 eggs that you fertilize at one time. Most people don't want 7 or 8 kids at one time. So you're going to choose one. What are you going to do with the other ones? See, that complicates things, right? And so that becomes a very complicated and complex. And I'm going to tell you, listen to me. I just read some knucklehead this morning on the internet that didn't believe preachers needed education. I am here to tell you, you have to be everything from the zookeeper to the lawyer to the theologian nowadays, okay? And there's not enough education or enough of your brain to hold the things that you need to hold, because our world is getting more and more complicated as men believe they are God, okay? And that's just the way it is. So let's move to these other two, euthanasia and suicide, because these two are really big, all right? You have euthanasia, which is when you're going to actually allow somebody to kill somebody. And we'll talk about that a little bit more in a moment. But we have suicide, and we think about suicide when I take my own life, and that's true. But we also have assisted suicide now. Ozzy Osbourne, one of the biggest names I know of that's participated in that just recently, you know. And it's voluntary euthanasia, and it's legally permitted in several countries. Now listen to this. I didn't know this till today. Switzerland, Canada, the Netherlands, Belgium, Spain, Austria, Luxembourg, New Zealand, and most of the Australian states. Listen to some of the points in these things. Canada, medically assisted in dying, MAID, allows eligible adults with grievous and irremediable medical conditions to receive assisted death. Switzerland, legal since 1942. It permits assisted suicide for non-residents as long as the assistant does not have self-serving motives. The Netherlands and Belgium, both countries allow both physician-administered euthanasia and assisted suicide for patients, experiencing unbearable suffering. United States, medical aid in dying is authorized in jurisdictions such as California, Oregon, Washington, and Vermont. I did not know that. Austria and New Zealand, both countries have legalized voluntary assisted dying, VAD, for terminally ill patients. It's coming to a town near you, okay? It's no longer your pet that you're taking to get euthanized. Now it's your loved one, okay? Francis Schaeffer, in his great book and his video series, How Shall We Then Live, has a section at the end of it. Now, Schaeffer died, I think, in 1982. He had a section at the end of it about what is going to come down the road in his mind, where people get terminally ill and they put them to sleep, but they keep their blood pumping through their organs so they can harvest the organs if they need them for spare parts for somebody else. Becoming more and more realistic, okay? I was picking on Joseph a while ago about having to share our food. But one of the things that we talk about now, if you, too many people living on planet Earth, okay? Not enough food. And I'm going to tell you something. Listen to Marty. I don't believe that we don't have enough land and resources to have food. I believe we have a group of people at the top of the heap that wants to control people. Take that one and put that in your pipe and smoke it, okay? Absolutely. Let me get my notes over here. I don't have it. I thought I had it. I'm sure I had it somewhere. That just slipped my mind there. Let me back up and get something else. Y'all have heard me say this has been 20 years ago or longer. I'm standing at the house. When I used to work night shift, I'm standing at the house and I'm watching the TV as I'm fixing breakfast one morning. I'm watching CNN. Now, you might like Fox, I don't. And you might like MSNBC, and I don't. One's too far one way, one's too far the other way. CNN used to be kind of in the middle, and so I'd watch them, and I like watching them. And so one morning, there I am watching them, and they're talking to this farmer out in Iowa or wherever he's at, and talking about the grain harvest. He says, "Well, what are you going to do with the grain harvest?" He said, "I'm going to take it and I'm going to pour it out there beside that mountain of grain over there that I poured out last year." Well, why are you going to do that? So I can keep the prices high so I can afford my equipment. All of his silos was full. There was 2 mountains. I'm talking about huge mountains. Not lying to you. The very next story was Russia. Russia was starving to death. They wanted, I forget how many billions of dollars from America to buy bread with. Let me tell you something. Don't give Russia money, because like anytime anybody gets money, guess what happens? The top gets 99% and the bottom gets 1%. I don't care what country it is, okay? South America, Africa, Middle East, Europe, it makes no difference. That's the way it works. Let's do this, Mr. President, whoever president was at the time, probably George Bush, I think. But Mr. President, let's do this. Let's pay the farmer fair wage for his grain. Put it on a truck or put it on a choo-choo and run it out to California. Pay the dock workers to put it on a boat. Pay the boat driver to drive it over there and let them make bread out of it. We're going to come out better, and they ain't going to have no money to build no war with. How's that? He's going to throw it away. Exactly. And we don't use our resources properly. Okay? We don't use our resources properly. This is what I was trying to think of a while ago. Joseph Stalin. Everybody talks about Hitler being a madman and being evil, and he was both of those things, but he looked like a choir director compared to Stalin. Stalin was evil, if there's ever been evil. And there's a story, and some people say it's not true, it was made up, and other people say it's true, but it was a story where Stalin had a pet chicken, and he was plucking the chicken as he was talking to his generals, and the chicken was squalling, and he was plucking. He plucked all of the feathers out of the chicken, and then he put him on the floor, and he reached in his pocket and got some grain, and he throwed some of it over there, and the chicken went over there. He held it down, and the chicken come to him, and he throwed some over there, and the chicken went over there, and he said, "That's the way stupid people are." He said, "You can do to them anything you want to do to them as long as you give them a handout." Okay? As long as you give them a handout. And buddy, they know if they can control our food, they can control us. But anyway, that's another story. Go back to what we're talking about. Euthanasia and suicide, self-inflicted. is becoming a real issue. Two other things real quick, and I won't belabor neither one of these. Racial discrimination. Racial discrimination. We're all created in the image of God. I don't care what color somebody is. I don't care where they come from. We are created in the image of God. And if you hate somebody because of the color of their skin or where they come from, bless God, you are a murderer according to Jesus. He said, if you hate, it's the same thing as murder. That's Matthew 5. Okay. So there's no place for that. Health and drugs. Man, what is your body? It's the temple of God. It's the temple of the Holy Spirit. We've been entrusted this body to look after. 1 Corinthians chapter 6, verses 19 through 20. We need to watch what we put in our body, and we need to take care of our body. Okay? If nothing else, we need to get up and walk to the refrigerator instead of get somebody else to get us something out of the refrigerator. 3 John, pull up 3 John 2, brother. I got this down here, and I thought this was a pretty good verse. Verse 2. There's only one chapter in there.
Yeah, let me remember how to do that.
3 John chapter 1, verse 2 is what it's going to be.
Yeah, this computer's crazy. Sorry. There you go.
Beloved, I wish above all things that thou may prosper and be in health, even as thy soul prosper. There's something good about having good health. Okay. 1 Timothy 4:8, 1 Corinthians 9:25 through 26. There's something, Paul talks about beating the air. He talks about exercising. He said, bodily exercise availeth nothing. Somebody correct me.
Bodily exercise availeth nothing.
No. What is it? What does he say?
Availeth much. Availeth much.
No.
Okay, what verse?
Availeth little. But it means that it availeth something. Okay? It's not useless. All right? We need to take care of the body that we have.
Amen. No matter how much it hurts.
Don't matter how much it hurts. Don't matter how hot it is. How sweaty and stinky you get because it's 100 degrees with 110% humidity outside. We got to look after the body that God gave us, because when we start letting our body dilapidate, it's like a car that we don't look after. It's like a house that we don't look after. It has less value. It's less serviceable. My little truck, I've tried to take care of my little truck. I'd be afraid to take off in it very far right now. It's got almost 300,000 miles on it. Like, it's just a few miles to be at 300,000 miles. Right? But I've taken care of it. That's why it's lasted 300,000 miles. Okay. We need to take care of our body. So as long as God gives us opportunity and allows us to live, that we're able to serve him in the capacity that he'd have us to do that. All right. So all of that said, you shall not murder yourself. Okay. You need to take care of yourself. You put drugs and stuff in your body and you're killing yourself. I did it for years. I can tell you without a shadow of a doubt, you're killing yourself. People talk about alcohol, whether it's right or wrong. It's poison. You put it in your body, you're poisoning your body. You smoke, you're poisoning your body. You take drugs, you're poisoning your body. You eat food like I eat most of the time, you're poisoning your body. Okay, you drink soda like I drink all the time, you're poisoning your body. You see what I'm saying? We need to take care of our body. There's a lot of ways of poisoning our body, okay? So, all right. Thou shalt not commit murder to anybody else and not to yourself. Right? If somebody comes in and is going to harm you or your family, I believe you have the right to take care of that. If you've been in the army and you was in a war and you were ordered to, you got to, I've never been in that situation, but you've got to do what you've got to do to survive. Now, you don't have to go above what you need to do to survive, but you got to do what you got to do to survive. Amen. And capital punishment, I believe God gives us the right for that, but we got to make good decisions on that stuff there as well. All right, let's pray.